Welcome back to another Sensei series. Today we're looking at 5 subtle aspects of guitar playing that make a big difference. And I've got links for you to each individual tip down in the description if you'd like to jump around. So here we go. 5 subtle things that make a big difference in your guitar playing. Number 1, touch. A musician's touch greatly influences their sound. Imagine Zakk Wylde and Chuck Berry playing the same lick through the same rig. It would sound totally different because both of them manipulate the guitar strings very differently. The idea of personal touch is a broad term that encapsulates a lot of subtle stylistic nuances. The way you place your finger on a fret, finding that sweet spot where it rings out just perfectly. How fast, slow, wide or narrow your vibrato is. Where your pick hits the guitar strings, how hard you hit the strings, do you mute the other notes? All these things, among others, really define our individual style. Everyone has natural tendencies, and I'm not here to tell you to do one thing or the other. But I would encourage you to be aware of these little things and experiment. Do you prefer the sound of a wide, slow, Clapton-esque vibrato? Or do you prefer the fast vibrato like B.B. King? Try different things out, see what you like, and let your own style evolve. Tip number 2. Cutoffs. The concept is that the point at which you cut a note off is nearly as important as the point at which you start playing a note. Let's look at an example. First, I'm going to play you a riff without caring much about cutoff points. Let's listen to that same riff with attention to the cutoffs. It's a subtle difference, but it really tightens up that passage. And this will become substantially more important the more musicians that you're playing with. If everybody in the band is cutting off a note at a different time, it's going to sound sloppy, and we want it to sound as tight as possible. Tip number 3, using musical space. This ties into the last point, and it'll tie into the next point as well. Musical silence can be equally as powerful as sound. Let's check out 2 short solo passages. There wasn't much space there, and to me it sounded like musical diarrhea. Let's see what adding some space sounds like. Much better in my opinion, because when you play less notes, the notes that you do play carry much more weight. Everything you play should serve a purpose, which is connected to the idea of musical phrasing, which I've gone into in another video that I'll link to right there. Now, musical space doesn't just apply to playing lead. When you're playing rhythm, you should be very conscious of this as well. Say you're playing with another player and they play a lead riff like this. If you're accompanying that and you start taking up a lot of sonic landscape, you're going to be taking away from what they're playing, which should be the focal point. Let's look at 2 examples. In my opinion, the second example puts the spotlight where it should be, on the lead part. First and foremost, as musicians, our role above everything else is to serve the song. Which brings me to point 4. Know your musical role. Like I said, when playing music, you're serving a higher purpose. Now calm down, I'm not about to get religious on you. The higher purpose is the song. Now this is why a guy like Ringo Starr is one of the greatest musicians of all time. His drumming always fit those Beatles songs perfectly. A song like Come Together might not have the most intricate drum part, but could you imagine how it would have sounded if somebody was shredding drums all over top of it? The best musicians always put the greater musical good over their own ego. You may want to show off your chops, but sometimes if you're playing folk music, you just gotta strum open chords. So how can we think about this practically? Think about what your purpose is in a musical setting. If I'm playing in a blues rock trio, I might fill up a lot of musical space like this. I'm trying to fill up a lot of sonic space because I'm taking on the role of a lead player as well as a rhythm player. If I'm in a band where there's a guitar player strumming open chords, I might try to do something that complements that. Maybe play some arpeggios higher up the neck. And say there's a piano already filling that role, well, I might want to do something like this. Because if somebody else is already filling that musical role, what's the point in doing the same thing? The greater idea is to always be thinking, what can I be playing now that best serves the song? Okay, last and not least, bend intonation. A very obvious way to identify yourself as a quality guitar player is to make sure all your bends are in tune. If you're bending those notes too sharp or too flat, it's going to sound pretty abrasive. You can cheat a little bit by adding some vibrato. This makes your tonal center slightly ambiguous, so you can get away with being a little bit out of tune. But I would also encourage you to get those bends perfectly in tune regardless of vibrato. You can do that by using some bending exercises. Here's one I like. You've got a major scale on one string. I'm going to take every note and practice bending it up to the next scale tone. There's countless variations on this. You can use different strings, different keys, whatever. But use your ear and try to make sure that it sounds right. You could also practice some unison bending exercises, like this. And just like the last exercise, there's lots of ways to change that up. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you found this information useful. To let me know you've watched this far, why don't you leave me a comment telling me what aspect of your favorite guitar player style do you really enjoy? I'm Samuraiguitarist, and I want to give a massive shout out to everybody who supports me on Patreon. It's because of you, the videos like these are possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.